Hello everyone. I know that this isn't the best angle and I'm going to be playing with different camera setups throughout the semester, so you may see angles change. You are going to pull out a 9 by 12 piece of white tag board from your painting kit. The tag board is smooth. It looks very similar to the 5 pieces of watercolor paper you got. The watercolor is a little bumpier. If you're in class and you need me to help you with that, I can. If you accidentally get a watercolor paper, 9 by 12 watercolor paper, rather than the tag board, it's fine. It will work, so don't stress it. My paper is a little bit smaller, just so that I can finish this tutorial in a decent amount of time. The first thing that you want to do with your paper is probably put your name on the back, unless you are at home and this isn't going to get messed up with everybody, but I'm going to put Mrs. B on the back. Then I'm going to take my tape and I'm going to tape a border that is pretty even, probably about a 1/2 inch border, or somewhere between 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch all the way around. If you can tape your paper down when painting, it's a great idea because that helps keep the paper from bowing and curling, and it just makes a really nice white border when you get done. You should have read over or looked over or been in class when we talked about mark making and considered your round brushes versus your flat brushes a little bit and what kind of marks they make before you begin. You also should open your acrylic paint set and have these ready to go, as well as a palette and water and some kind of a towel or paper towel. The first layer, if you read the assignment, is a solid layer of color. Please, please, please handle your paint with care and just squeeze out small bits because it will be gone quickly. You don't have to mix color for the background color. You could pick one of the colors that you already have. I am going to put a little bit on my palette and I'm going to mix these together. I'm going to use a larger brush for this background, and I prefer a flat brush so that it is nice and flat. This color that it's going to give me is kind of a mint green. If you mix any color with white, you're going to get a lighter value, and the darker color is going to take over the white quickly. I'm going to paint my solid background. You do not need to paint this quickly. You can take your time. I'm doing so because it is a tutorial. Pay attention closely to the direction that your marks are going. It's always better to use slightly thicker paint than thinner when you're using acrylic because it's opaque and it should cover areas really well. There are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, that's how you cover your background layer. I'm getting close to getting ready for my second layer. You're supposed to use thick blotches of color for your second layer. You might want to get a color that's different from this one so that they show up, although this is not about color mixing, so I don't want you to freak out over color right now. That is not the point of this assignment. You'll notice that when I load color onto my brush, I never go up into this metal area. You will ruin your brushes very quickly if you bring color up into this metal area. So train yourself. These are your brushes. I'm low on brushes. You're not going to get a lot of new brushes. I'm going to go ahead and wash my brush out in my water container. And I'll wash all of my brushes at the end, but you can see that's pretty clean. I'm going to use this same brush for the next color. I'm going to put just a plain red. I'm not going to mix anything with it just because that's very different from green on the color wheel. And I'm going to put some onto my palette. Again, I am never using a ton of paint. Ideally, if you're at home or you have something else to do, you can let this dry a little bit. Acrylic paint dries pretty quickly unless it's in big blobs, but there might be a little bit of mixing between the red and the color underneath. That's okay. Just some kind of patterning of big, thick blotches to show. You can just randomly put them across your page. You could do a line that goes up and down of big blotches. But just to show kind of what a flick of the paintbrush does and how thick you can get on some of these blobs. So really look at the paint. I know this sounds very strange, but very, very few painters, when they learn, stop and think about how to use their brush. I've washed that out again. Again, I'll wash them well when I'm done. I'm going to dry that brush. Now I'm going to change to a smaller brush. There's a couple of smaller sizes and probably a round brush so that you can get a good point. I'm going to use this one just so it doesn't take as long in my demo. And this time I'm going to mix a little yellow in with this mint color, and that's going to kind of give me a lime color. Again, this isn't about color mixing, but you can just kind of have fun and see what colors you can get. And you can see that difference in that lime once I put the yellow in there. Okay? Be careful if you go up into that metal, again, it's going to start ruining your brush, so you want to be careful when you mix. Now I'm going to do smaller lines and patterns, skinnier lines. I'm going to see how thin I can get with my line. This is such a quick tutorial. Take your time. If you want to take these skinny lines and trace around some of your bigger blotches of paint with smaller lines, you can. If you want to trace around the edge of your composition, you can. Think about the whole composition and working all the way across it. Don't get stuck in one corner. That's a really good thing to think about every time you paint. Okay, I'm going to rinse that brush off. The next thing on that assignment is dots. We're going to go for some dark blue dots. This time I'm going to use the back of my paintbrush. You can also paint with the back of your paintbrush. And I'm just dipping a little bit of paint on there, and I'm going to put some dots into my painting. Wherever I want. And I can put some larger dots with the back of a pencil, or if you have a bottle cap at home or any round kind of cap that you want to use as a stamp, you could. I'm not going to do that right now. I have a lot of blue paint actually left over, and I'm going to use a little bit of that up by putting some dots in the middle of my red areas that are making it a little more textured, because I don't really want to waste that paint, because this paint should be precious to you. Okay, now I'm also just adding in for fun. This is random, it's not even on your list, but just some little blue lines to use up that blue paint. At this point in patterning, I am going to stop after the solid color, the large paint splotches, the small paint lines, and the dots. This will need to dry before we do our last two sections tomorrow. So hopefully we'll get to this on Friday of this week, but we'll see. I just need to be flexible with checking Google Classroom and the calendar. And I am going to leave my tape on here and put this onto the painting rack at the front of the room carefully. This is what I have at this point. Yours will be a little bit larger than mine. We are going to put 2 more final layers on this next time and take the tape off just to show you what textural pieces do. I've got some great examples that will be sitting in the classroom, and if you're at home, again, you can look at more examples of textural paintings online. At this point, please go very carefully to the sinks. Do not crowd each other. Wash your brushes and dry them out as well as possible before you put them back into your locker. Wash your palettes out if you wish. If those get a little dirty and you just want to clean them off every once in a while, that's fine. Clean off everything you have. Clean off your water palette and put that away. Just take your time.